In a small village in Nigeria, there was a child nobody wanted. They did not celebrate her birth. They did not sing her name. They called her a mistake. They called her shame. They said her life ended before it began. She was born from a painful story, a story she did not choose. Her mother cried when she arrived. The village whispered when she walked past. Children refused to play with her. Even her own family kept their distance. But listen carefully. Because this is not a story about shame. This is not a story about rejection. This is a story about what happens when destiny refuses to bow. This is the story of a girl they laughed at. A girl they said would never succeed. A girl who stood on a national stage at 16 and silenced an entire country. And years later, she returned to the same village that mocked her. Not broken, not bitter, but crowned. Stay with me. Because by the end of this story, you will understand something powerful. The stone the builders reject sometimes becomes the cornerstone. In a small town in southern Nigeria, where red dust rose like silent prayers and palm trees swayed like old women gossiping, there lived a girl named Amora. Amora was 19. She had laughter like morning birds and eyes that carried dreams bigger than the river Niger. But one dark night, when the moon hid behind angry clouds, something happened that changed her life forever. The elders would later whisper, it was not her fault. The women at the stream would shake their heads and say, the child did nothing wrong. But whispers do not stop pain. What happened to Amara was wickedness. It was a crime. And everyone in the community knew she was not to blame. Yet knowing the truth did not stop the shame that followed her like a stubborn shadow. Weeks passed. Then months. And one morning, as the cock crowed and the village stretched awake, Amara discovered she was carrying a child. Her mother wept. Not small tears. Big tears that fell like heavy rain on zinc roofs. What will people say? Her mother cried. And people talked. Oh, they talked. They laughed in corners. They pointed fingers in markets. They said, that girl's life is finished. Amara walked through the village with her head bowed, but inside her chest her heart beat like a drum of survival. Her mother, blinded by fear and shame, tried to remove the pregnancy. She tried herbs. She tried secret visits. But the child held on like destiny itself. Months later, under a burning Harmattan sky, Amara gave birth to a baby girl. The baby cried loudly, not weakly, not softly, but boldly, as if announcing, I am here. But instead of joy, there was silence. The grandmother refused to carry the child at first. Neighbors avoided the house. They called the baby names no child should ever hear. Seed of shame. Child without a father. Even Amora, wounded and exhausted, struggled to look at her own daughter without remembering the pain. The baby was named Zora. And from the very beginning, Zora's cradle was not rocked by love, but by rejection. Yet, in the quiet of the night, when everyone slept and the world stopped judging, the little baby would look up at the ceiling and smile. As if heaven had whispered something to her. As if destiny had already written a different ending. And in that small house of sorrow, a seed was growing. Not a seed of shame, but a seed of greatness. Little did the village know. The stone they rejected had just been born. Zora did not grow in her mother's arms. She grew in her grandmother's backyard, where cracked walls listened to insults and dry winds carried cruel laughter from neighboring houses. Her grandmother fed her, yes. But love. Love was scarce like rain in the dry season. Whenever visitors came, they would lower their voices and whisper, that is the girl, you know, the product of that shame. Children refused to play with her. If she ran toward them, they scattered like frightened chickens. If she smiled at them, they mocked her. Bastard, they sang. Seed of sin. Zara did not understand those words at first. She only knew they hurt. By the time she turned 6, she understood. And pain settled inside her small chest like a stubborn stone. Her mother, Amora, avoided her. The sight of Zara reminded her of that dark night, of broken dreams, of gossip that never slept. So she kept her distance. Zara learned early that tears must be wiped quickly. No one would comfort her. At school, things were not easier. Some teachers looked at her with pity. Others looked at her with suspicion, as if shame was something that could be inherited. But there was something unusual about Zara. She was brilliant. Her mind was sharp like a newly cut cutlass. She solved mathematics before others finished reading the question. She read books beyond her age. She asked questions that made teachers uncomfortable. Still, when school fees were due, nobody rushed to help her. Sometimes she was sent home. Sometimes she stood outside the classroom, listening through the window. At 8 years old, she began doing small jobs. She fetched water for neighbors. She cleaned compounds. She helped in the market after school. Her little hands hardened before their time. At night, under a flickering kerosene lamp, she studied. Mosquitoes sang in her ears. Hunger twisted her stomach. But her eyes burned with determination. I will be valuable, she whispered to herself. I will be useful. Nobody believed in her. Relatives would say, girls like you don't go far. The village had already written her future in chalk. But Zara began writing her own destiny in permanent ink. Sometimes, when the house was quiet, she would hum softly to herself. A small tune. A melody without fear. Her voice was clear. Strong. Different. The same neighbors who mocked her would pause unknowingly when they heard her sing. But pride would not allow them to praise her. So they remained silent. Yet something was growing inside that rejected child. Not bitterness. Not revenge. But fire. A fire that refused to die. And as the years moved like slow village drums, Zara was preparing for something nobody saw coming. The rejected seed was taking root. And roots, when they grow deep enough, can break through stone. By the time Zara turned 12, the village had grown used to her silence. They thought she was weak. They thought she had accepted her fate. But inside her, a storm was gathering. Every evening, after her small market jobs, Zara would climb a quiet hill behind her grandmother's house. It was a lonely place, where tall grass danced and the wind moved freely without gossip. There, she would sing. Not for applause. Not for money. But to release the weight inside her chest. Her voice rose into the sky like a prayer. Sometimes soft like evening rain. Sometimes powerful like thunder rolling across the Niger. Even the wind seemed to pause to listen. One day, an old retired music teacher named Mr. Afolabi, who had returned to the village after many years in Lagos, was passing by the hill. He stopped. He listened. His walking stick trembled in his hand. Who is singing? He whispered. When he saw Zara, he frowned in surprise. You, he asked gently. Zara lowered her eyes. She was used to disbelief. Yes, sir. Sing again. She did. And the old man's eyes filled with tears. This voice, he said slowly, is not ordinary. This is a gift. For the first time in her life, someone saw something beautiful in her. Mr. Afolabi began teaching her after school. He had no grand studio. Just an old keyboard and a heart that believed. He trained her breathing. He corrected her tone. He taught her how to stand without fear. But news travels fast in a village. People began to talk again. They want to make that shameful girl a star. Abomination. Who will support her? Zara heard everything. Yet she did not stop. At 15, a flyer came to the village, a national youth singing competition in Abuja. Winner gets full scholarship and national recognition. The whole school buzzed with excitement. When Zara picked up the form, laughter followed her like drums at a wedding. "You," someone scoffed. "You think Nigeria is waiting for you?" Even her grandmother shook her head. "Do not embarrass us." But Mr. Afolabi looked at her and said only one sentence. "Let them laugh." And so, Zara prepared. While others slept, she practiced. While others doubted, she believed. The competition day arrived. Bright lights. Big stage. Crowd roaring. Zara stood backstage, heart pounding like festival drums. She could hear whispers behind her. "That is the girl from that village." "Yes, the one born from shame." Her hands trembled. For a second, fear tried to swallow her. But then she remembered every insult. Every hunger. Every tear wiped alone. And when her name was called, Zara walked onto that stage. Not as the rejected child, but as destiny rising. The girl they laughed at opened her mouth. And Nigeria went silent. The lights were blinding. The stage was wide like an open field. Before Zara stood judges from Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, people whose faces she had only seen on television screens in small viewing centers. The audience murmured. Some flipped through their programs carelessly. No one expected anything from the skinny girl in a simple dress. Back in her village, people had gathered around one small television powered by a noisy generator. "Let us see how she would disgrace herself," someone said. Zara closed her eyes. For one heartbeat, she was no longer on a stage. She was back under the flickering kerosene lamp. Back outside classroom windows. Back on the hill where only the wind clapped for her. When the music began, soft and slow, she took a breath. And she sang. Her voice did not shake. It soared. Clear. Deep. Carrying pain, hope, and fire all at once. The hall grew quiet. Very quiet. The careless flipping of programs stopped. Judges leaned forward. Her song was not just melody. It was testimony. It told the story of a child unwanted. Of tears swallowed in darkness. Of a dream that refused to die. Halfway through, one judge removed his glasses and wiped his eyes. Another judge whispered, "My God." Back in the village, the noisy compound fell silent. The same mouths that once mocked her were now open, not to insult, but in shock. Zara hit the final note. It rose high like a bird breaking free from a cage. And when the music stopped, there was a pause. One long, heavy pause. Then the hall exploded. Applause thundered like rainy season storms. People stood to their feet. Strangers were crying. The judges stood too. Standing ovation. Zara blinked rapidly. Was this real? When the results were announced later that night, suspense filled the air like thick harmattan dust. Third place. Not her. Second place. Not her. And the winner of the National Youth Voice Nigeria. The host smiled. Zara Amora. For a second, she did not move. The crowd roared. Confetti fell like colorful rain. Mr. Afolabi jumped from his seat, tears streaming freely. Back in the village, someone screamed. She has won. The same compound that mocked her began to shout her name. Zara walked forward slowly. The crown was placed on her head. Flashlights blinked. Microphones pushed toward her face. "What is your story?" a reporter asked. Zara held the microphone gently. She could have spoken bitterness. She could have spoken anger. But she smiled. "I am proof," she said softly, "that rejection is not the end." And that night, Nigeria did not just discover a voice. Nigeria discovered a story. But the journey of the rejected stone had only just begun.
Thanks for watching this folktale till the end. If you enjoyed the story, please like, share, and leave a comment to tell us what lesson touched your heart the most. Don't forget to subscribe and press the notification bell so you never miss another African folktale.